Some individuals will make the argument that Honkai Star Rail does not have a good combat system. Certain individuals may even go as far to say that Honkai Star Rail isn't even a true turn-based game. Sometimes what certain individuals will do is they will make comparisons with Honkai Star Rail with other turn-based games that have more in-depth mechanics, more layers, and things along those lines. Something that I think tends to be overlooked with these kind of individuals who make these kind of arguments is that a complex system doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be a better game or a more likable game. Sure, as a personal preference, that's fine to have that stance, but as far as appealing to the general audience, there's not an end-all be-all win button to get people to play the game. Games at the end of the day is the sum of its parts, and a big strength when it comes to Honkai Star Rail is that its combat is simplistic. It's very easy to pick up, learn, get into, and to have some fun with it. Now, I do want to say this is something that has been a consistent design philosophy with MiHoYo throughout Honkai Impact 3rd, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and probably Zenless Zone Zero as well. All of these games have very simple combat mechanics. However, each of these games in their own way, shape, or form have something that I would like to call internal depth. And what this internal depth means is that for players who have a good understanding of their character and have a good understanding of the enemy mechanics, there will be certain situations where they will be able to take better advantage of that situation in comparison to other players. Let me give you an example. Let's say we take Genshin Impact for example. Anemo MC. We know the ultimate is a tornado that just travels forward. However, if this is used along the edge of a wall like an abyss, its forward momentum will stop. This is an example of internal depth. For certain characters, maybe a player won't go through the full normal rotation. Maybe they'll use just the first 2 or 3 hits, and then maybe they'll do a jump cancel or a dash cancel and start the chain over because that results in a higher DPS. To give you an example in terms of Honkai Star Rail, let's take Acheron for example, and the swarm bosses. So whenever the smaller bugs of the swarm pop, they apply a debuff to all remaining targets in the field. This is a mechanic that only Acheron herself benefits from because every time that interaction happens, she gets a stack for her ultimate. No other character in the game currently benefits from this interaction to the same extent as Acheron. Let me use another example. Let's take Blade. Let's say there's Kafka and then there's an Elite. The Elite decides to attack Blade, and then Kafka does a follow-up attack on Blade. So in that short notion of time, Blade could get 3 or more stacks from getting hit twice, plus taking the T.O.T from the shock, making it very easy for him to access his follow-up attack again. This is a very unique mechanic for a character like Blade. Take Hule as another example. Characters like Clara or Young Lee are going to have a field day because Hule has a very high attack frequency and a lot of his attacks tend to be AoE, which means these characters have very easy access to countering Hule a whole lot. The point that I'm trying to make is because of this internal depth, it allows a mid-core audience to learn a little bit more about the game and be a little bit more rewarded for them paying attention to things in comparison to the normal everyday person. Yes, a game with more complex mechanics and more depth will more than likely appeal to a more hardcore audience and will pull in more of that audience. However, as an overall appeal, I'm not sure if the number of hardcore players that would be appealed to that game is going to be able to compensate for the number of mid-core players and the number of the casual players that would end up dropping the game quicker because it's just too many mechanics. I do believe that sometimes less is more. Let me give you an example. When I compare the rappers Tupac and Biggie, a lot of people are going to agree that Biggie is the better lyricist. However, who's the more iconic artist? It's Tupac without a doubt. Sometimes there is a beauty in simplicity. Going back to games that have very complex mechanics and very complex systems and multiple layers of depth, there is also another potential downside of information overload. So what this could lead to is a person is getting hit with so much information that they're not able to retain anything, or even worse, they may end up getting hit with so much information that they don't make a decision at all. Because Honkai Star Rail keeps things very simple, players don't have to really be overwhelmed with the amount of information that's coming in and the number of choices that they have to make. And at the end of the day, this is a big strength when it comes to Honkai Star Rail. So my overall short, brief message is that there are games that can have simplistic mechanics and still be extremely successful, and there are games that have very complex mechanics and can still be successful. However, for games that have more complex mechanics mechanics and internal depth and things along those lines, numerous layers, there's no guarantee that they're going to sell better than a game that appeals to a larger market. And I think one of the biggest examples that we can see with this when it comes to a game like Honkai Star Rail is that there have been nerfs to story content on multiple occasions. If the combat system has such a huge entry to barrier, well, guess what? Some players are not going to stick around to actually get through the story. They're just going to drop the game quick. Now, in my opinion, the end game is mainly catered to a mid-core audience. But they do want to make sure that the rest of the game is mainly appealing to a casual audience. This is, of course, just my opinion. And at the end of the day, what the devs are doing with Honkai Star Rail, it is working. And that's why Honkai Star Rail is one of the most successful games out there. And again, this isn't to say that a game that is more successful than other games is automatically better, but obviously, if you want to appeal to a larger audience, this tends to be the easiest route to take. One final thing that I'll mention before I wrap up this topic is that even though there are certain games out there that can just appeal mainly to a hardcore audience and be successful, if we're going to view things in a giant overall vacuum, most games out there that have a very large player base, normally the mass majority of the population is going to be a combination of casual players and mid-core players. The hardcore audience in most games is going to be the minority. So most companies are going to want to make sure that they cater their products to a mid-core and a casual audience for the most part. They may throw the hardcore audience some breadcrumbs here and there or do them a favor, but for the most part, focus should be on the casual audience and the mid-core audience. And again, there are certain games that can appeal to mainly just a hardcore audience, but those tend to be games that don't need to make nearly as much money to keep the product afloat. So very recently, the Zenless Zone Zero 2.0 stream took place, and even though I don't play the game, even I was very excited about some of the things that was announced. So two of the things that was a big eye-opener for me that I have to give props to the Zenless Zone Zero game and devs for is that they're going to be providing a free standard 5-star along with a free standard 5-star engine. I think this is great for new players getting into the game. I think this is also great for players who have been playing the game for a while and maybe they already went through their 300 summon pool for a particular 5-star character, and maybe there's just one that's just kept evading them and they kept missing, and this is an opportunity for those players to pick that character up. Now, there might be some individuals who are being pessimistic about the situation and saying, oh well, not really a big deal because you're giving out characters that have already been outperformed by newer characters. My thing is at the end of the day, it's a free character, and if somebody already has all the characters, that's just a free Mindscape copy at the end of the day. I don't see any negatives with this whatsoever unless somebody has like literally Mindscape 6 on all of these characters, which honestly that person has already been rewarded by having early access to a fully maxed out character in regards to Mindscape. That's kind of a risk that any Whale or Leviathan player takes when they max out a character super early. They don't benefit from free rewards as much as low spenders and free to plays. It is what it is. Two other things that I'll mention. When I saw the preview for the 2.0, I looked at the caption. It says the next stop Wi-Fi Peninsula version 2.0 preview registration. I originally read that as Waifu Peninsula. My head is obviously in the gutter. I have definitely a reading issue, but I had a little laugh about that. And finally, Bella and Wise got new drip cosmetics. I think these cosmetics look fabulous on these characters, and it hurts me a little bit inside because I know, coming from Honkai Impact 3rd, Honkai Star Rail could be making a pretty good amount of money off of cosmetics, and they just haven't just really locked into it as of yet. Now, me personally, I know this game, Honkai Star Rail, could really benefit from cosmetics. I remember when Diluc got his premium cosmetic in Genshin Impact, and there were some players who never played Diluc in their life, and they went ahead and built him, and some of these individuals found Diluc to be, a pretty solid character. And then there were other individuals who had picked up his premium skin, and they had benched Diluc for a while, and when some of these individuals started playing him again, they were reminded of how fun he used to be to play, and they were like, oh wow, I forgot Diluc was this fun to play. That was a sentiment that I did see to some extent. Alright, so here momentarily what I'll go ahead and do is I'll discuss some of my thoughts over the 3.1 and 3.2 storylines. If you have come across this quest on your screen, that means that you have completed the 3.2 storyline. If you haven't seen this yet, click off of this video, go do the story, and then come back and watch this part because I don't want to spoil anybody. Alright, 3.1 storyline. Mighty was an absolute giga chat, going through the trial, embodying the Titan of Strife, and like when he threw that lance at the Flame Reaver, I was like, man, this is absolute cinema. I loved it so much, super big fan, and yeah, that's that's all I've really got to say. Mighty was super enjoyable in 3.1. Now, in regards to 3.2, there were so many bombshells toward the end. It was crazy. For one thing, what I will say is Castorus' storyline was actually really interesting. Her and her twin sister, and then her twin sister not wanting Castorus to suffer, so she literally respawned Castorus, brought her back alive. Because of Felixia doing that, it ended up causing this issue where people who had died couldn't fully cross over and get to the end of the Styx River, and so this caused a lot of problems. That was very interesting how that situation went about. I just gotta say, I liked how they went about doing it. I might not be explaining things very well, and then Castorus finally got to that point where she accepted her role as the Titan of Death and had to basically stay in the nether realm to be able to guide the souls on through properly. Didn't even realize like the Trailblazer had died when they originally got into Emporius. That was something that threw me off. I didn't even realize that. So that was kind of crazy. But of course, he was able to be brought back to life. That's pretty interesting. Now, in regards to Cypher, she is so hard-coded. It is not even funny. I love Cypher. Out of all of the Crisis hairs so far, she is hands down my favorite. I get Flash vibes off of her, and maybe to a lesser extent, maybe Deadpool to a slightly lesser extent, because she does like to troll a whole lot. And I mean, it's like almost every single situation, she's trying to find some way to make money or get some kind of treasure or something. I love Cypher's personality so much. And the fact that she was able to like move the Trailblazer across to the Styx and just zoom out automatically, it's just like, wow, you are something else. And then at the end, like Acheron showed up out of nowhere. I was not even expecting that. I'm like, what in the world is Acheron doing? Is she just gonna just barge into our minds at random points in time throughout the rest of the story? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating, but that threw me off because I was not expecting to see Acheron at all. I was like, what is going on? At the end, Herta getting into Emporius, and there was that robot Lugus. I can't remember the character's name, but I think that's just like a robot or an android. They were like, you know what? I'll give you a real good reason why you don't want to enter Emporius. Because if you go in there is literally going to be Lord Ravager that gets summoned. And I was like, there is a Lord Ravager in Emporius? That's insane. And also another thing is when Herta showed up, there was apparitions of Dan Heng, the Trailblazer, and also there was the Flame Reaver, which was really weird because I guess the Flame Reaver might have like somehow broke in or something along those lines. I don't know what's going on. So that's pretty crazy. I'm looking forward to the follow-up on that as well. So a lot of bombshells toward the end of 3.2, and I'm just like, my brain's still trying to process everything. But I like Herta, you know, because she went in there and she was like, bruh, you really think you gonna stop me from entering Emporius? And like, but that Lord Ravager comment, I think was a pretty good reason. So, well, I'll have to see if they're gonna keep her out. Another thing that I think what they might be doing with Herta in the patches moving forward is they may tack on a little bit more of her own story progression at the end of these next couple of story acts, as long as they stay focused on Emporius. That's kind of what I'm getting the vibe of, but we'll have to see. Also, Black Swan and Himiko talking with one another, we kind of found out a revelation that Black Swan underestimated the dangers of the situation. So I have no idea what's gonna happen from here on out. I guess Lee did something and caught Black Swan's attention. So one thing that I think got further confirmed through a Nexus storyline is that these Titans seem to have originally been humans or sages. It wasn't just a Nikador situation. This applies to multiple other Titans. And I'm kind of wondering if the Chrysalis hairs that are ascending to be these Titans, I'm wondering if we're going to end up having to fight them at some point in the future. Now, Anexa actually siding with the Flame Chase journey was something that really threw me off. I did not expect that twist at the end because he's never really been in support of the Flame Chase journey. But I guess with Castorus providing that proof that he was needing, I guess he had a change of heart. So absolute cinema. He was a real Giga Chad, and oh man, that Katniss Elder, man, she was mad as all get out. I was like, oof. And then the next one was like, silence, don't interrupt me when I am talking. And I was like, oh, Anexa, get him, man. You lay that stuff down. If you had taken out the time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.
The show begins. Let's improvise.
Step up, let's see ya.